Hello. Hey Evan. Hey everyone.
Hey, Orlemi.
How's it going?
Doing well, doing well. How are you?
Good? Your first time on the stream?
It's my first time.
Is it your first time on any stream?
It actually, it is. I think I've shown up on some game streams here and there as a participant, but never the one on camera. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I know you're a gamer. We've been gaming lately, so I would have expected you to be a strong Twitch streamer, but
yeah,
I guess no.
not so much. Just kind of a Warzone newbie, and trying to convert you into one as well. Get you away from Apex.
Okay, so you're Evan, but what do you do, Evan? Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Evan Lindsey. I'm working with you at Postman. So at Postman, my title is actually now a senior SDET. So what that means is software development engineer and test. So I work with the engineering groups on a particular squad. And with that, we focus on developing code, but the code that we're trying to develop is focused on the quality assurance of a particular area of Postman. So in doing so, we have to know the product very well, right? So basically, we're quality assurance in that we're testing the product, but we're also creating, automated and very well thought out solutions to doing the testing. Been with the company for about, I guess this is almost month 3 that I've been with them. So still kind of new and still getting to know everybody. So getting to know you, and here we are.
I think as the company is growing so fast, I struggle to know everyone. There's like 10 new joiners every week, and it's always like, oh, you're new, and then you stumble upon calls with like people you don't know, and it's a constant discovery.
Yeah.
So I'm Arlemy. You may know me already, but I know some new faces. There's Test Explorer in the chat. Hello. I don't think I've seen you before, but I'm a developer advocate at Postman as well. I live in London, and basically what I do is we hear feedback from users. Something may not be working, and then I go to Evan. I say, please fix this, and then Evan takes it and does his magic, and then fixes it with the engineering team, and there we go. What are we going to do today? So we've labeled that stream as building and playing an API-driven game. So what we'll first do, we'll go through. There's a GitHub repo that Evan created, which shows like how that game works and how you can like play it from your end, and I'll go through that and show you how you can do it. And then Evan will show us like how he created it, the code behind it, and how you could like basically do the same. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good on this. And just kind of, I guess, a little background how this came to be too, why this even exists. I think is kind of a neat little tidbit about the company. So basically, every other week at the company, we have the Thursday demos, right? So that gives an opportunity for the business side of things to kind of give an update about where we're at, how things are coming, new updates to the product. But also when we're new to the company, we're expected to give some sort of demo, just sort of showcasing our usage of the product. So you'll see what came to life, but that's basically why this exists. And just thought that would give a good background as to what it is.
Yeah, you're just giving our secrets, saying we have product demos, etc. during the week. People are not supposed to know. Okay, so before we start, as we always do, we'll do in case you missed it. So what is in case you missed it? Let me move Skype away. In case you missed it is just me going quickly through what's been released in the last Postman, release. So 7.33 was released this week, and 2 new features came with it. So as always, if you want to read about it, you can either look at the changelog on our website, like the full release notes, or you can go on our community forum, and there's like user-friendly release notes, as we call them, which just walk you through the main new features. So 2 things. We have the API builder where you can import, create, design your APIs, and like generate API elements. If you're doing that in a collaboration setting, you may want to be notified with like by email or in-app when someone changes something. So now you have that feature, a bit like the watch on GitHub, when you can watch a repository for changes. So you can click on watch. You're watching it, and then from there on, you'll be getting notifications whenever someone like updates the schema, adds a comment or something like that. The other one, talking about GitHub, is you can now bulk import specification from GitHub. So there's a nice, neat workflow that you can go through. Lists all your repositories, scans for specification files, and then you can select which ones you want to import and whether you want to generate collections from it. And that's it. So easier than like downloading them locally, importing them, or importing through a link, and also like scans the whole thing. So hopefully it makes your life easier. So that's it for the news. It's short, hopefully sweet. Hopefully you like that, and hopefully you're going to use it. But let's get into the actual content. Hey John, John's work alias. Okay, so that's hello John. Let's go ahead and look for the repository. So I'm looking for Evan. Lindsey. So I'm gonna paste that on the chat. So you may want to follow along. You may just want to watch what I'm doing. But that's the repository that you've put together that goes through what the app is and how I can play it, right?
Yeah, it should have a link to the actual built version of the game, which runs on WebGL, so it's hosted through GitHub. The service itself is out of a separate repo, but I don't think we're going to go into as much detail on the service itself. It's more or less just a relay layer that we can send the messages from Postman to the game. But the repo itself should outline what's necessary for you to be able to open the game in your browser and then start calling it from Postman.
Okay, let's see if you've done a good job. We love going through like
the documentation test.
Yeah. So first link, I click on it. What do I see? Okay, I do see a Unity 3. So you've been using Unity, you were saying, and that's the game. So it's saying awaiting connection. So I'm guessing I need to, or this is like creating a connection with the backend.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
The way it's hosted is the service lives on Heroku. If you're familiar with Heroku, they're actually a great service if you just need a very simple free service that can live on the cloud. That said, if you actually intended on a lot of people using it, you need to pay for it. But if you're using the free layer or the free tier, it sleeps when you're not using it. So the first person to connect to it in a given day, it might take them a minute to wake it up. So that's what's going on.
Okay, so we've got a link now. I'm gonna go back to the. So you would expect, right, from a game that clicking on my arrows would move the thing around, but no, we're not. We're an API focused company. We like playing with APIs. So I'm gonna go and follow the instructions. So get Postman. Luckily enough, I already have it, and it's running actually here. You can see, got the collection runner. I'm gonna close, and I've got the app. I can get the collection of API calls. So that's a link to the JSON. What I'm going to do, I'm gonna copy the link and import from a link like this. Format not recognized. No way. Let me first switch to the right. So it does not recognize the format. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to save it first on Twitch. Cool. I'm going to try to import this way. I'm going to go to Twitch. Have you had that issue before where it did not recognize?
The format of the collection?
Yeah.
Not personally. I actually haven't imported this collection because I was the one exporting it, so maybe I should have tried both ways.
Well, it says format not recognized for some reason. Let me quickly see if I can have a look. I'm going to open the file on the side. And if not, we'll just switch to your laptop because I think you have it already open. Well, so actually, I'm trying to import an HTML file instead of JSON. So that's the file that I'm getting from your.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not an issue with Postman.
No, that's probably
yeah,
just because I'm doing save as. Yeah, so I should actually that's GitHub, right? That's even though it finishes by JSON, it's still an HTML page of the file. So I need to go here, and now I can import.
Yeah, we want to download the raw file. So after under instructions, if you click on the collection of API calls is available link, yeah, so that's going to bring you to the file in the repo. But what you'll want to do is click on raw, and then you'll want to download that file as a raw JSON file, and that should fix it for you.
So now I just realized you're watching me on Twitch, so you have a delay. Let me share my screen on Skype so you can actually see. Because like what you just described, I had already done it when you were talking about it. So now you can see
really?
real time. Yeah. So
I'm not actually watching you at all. I'm just speaking in theory. I've got you on Skype.
Okay, so now you can see I'm on my Postman, and I've imported the collection, which is called Postman Notes. I'm gonna scroll down and find it here, and I have my collection with the different calls. So that's the different calls that I can do. So turn forward, turn back, turn left, and I can make the character move. I'm gonna go in the to side window, and we'll go back to the repository and walk through. So I've got the API calls in my Postman. It's imported. I need to go back to the game, get the endpoint. So I get this, and I should have. So do I need to change the collection variable? No, I need to change it at the collection level, request level. So let's do walk.
The easiest thing to do would be to set environment variables. So what we can do is create an environment. So endpoint is already going to be set as the variable that you're using in each of these calls. So what you'll want to do is create an environment, and then we can just add these two variables to the environment.
Let's do new. Go Postman at endpoint. It's going to be this, and then we have one that is username.
Yeah, username.
It's going to be Almy. Okay. And I'm going to select that environment, and it picks it up. So that's nice. Let me quickly see. Hey, Danny. And Okay, so yeah, someone on chat had the same issue with the import, but they fixed it by clicking on the link and then doing row, and yeah.
Yeah. So what I can do is I can fix that in the doc that it just takes you to the raw file as opposed to the file path in GitHub. So we caught an error in the docs. Very nice.
So now it says send your actions, and that's it. So let's go ahead. So I've got my Postman out here, and I'll tell him to walk. It's walking. Look at him go. I'm so proud.
Yeah, and you can see over there that you called the the user is you. The performance was walk, but there's no direction assigned. So for certain calls, you may just be calling an action. For certain calls, you may be calling a direction, and for certain calls, you may be calling both.
So if I walk back, is it going to start moonwalking towards me, or is it going to turn around and?
I can't even remember. Let's find out.
Okay. It's doing a
There you go.
proper 180.
You get to see that sweet Postman logo.
Yeah, I must say I appreciate the time you spent designing this. Some well-designed game.
Well, as far as all the assets, the Postman itself, the astronaut, that's something I got free off the Unity asset store. Same with the background, and the landscape itself is actually a 3D model taken off the NASA website that I blew up to about 8,000% so that he could walk on it. So I'm definitely not an artist or an animator by any means, but I am capable of pinning a Postman logo to someone else's asset. So
that works pretty well. So I don't know
Yeah.
if anyone noticed, I managed to make a flip while. So how fast can I send these requests? So it just only does flips.
Yeah, you could actually, I was playing around with this. It kind of confuses it, but if you wanted to send the whole collection, you would see him try and do a whole bunch of things at once and then just come to a stop.
Let's try that. So with the collection runner, we can line up a certain amount of calls. If it loads. Okay, cool. So I've got my Postman collection. I don't want it to ping. I don't want it to be idle. I'll go. Let's see. If it walk, then it will turn left actually, so we have the right side of it, and then it's going to do a flip to the left. There has to be, there's a deselect all. I could have used that. Would have been easier. And let's do that 5 times with no delay. Okay. Let's see. Oh, what's happening? Oh, it doesn't get the environment.
Oh, is there an environment you need to set in the collection runner?
Probably. Let's see.
Yep, environment. There we go.
There we go. So all good. Need to specify environment. Yep, good point. Yeah, okay. I could spend hours doing that actually.
Took precedent over the other stuff.
I think it's just because
Let's
it was already going left. So if I change the turn left to turn right and flip back like this, and then flip left. That's some strong capoeira move.
Yeah, he's got him, and it looks like he ran into the wall. So, in order to keep you to stay, to keep you on that giant model I was saying I blew up, there's some invisible boundaries. So, at a certain point, if you're walking left, walking right, forward or back, you will eventually run into a boundary, and that's where you're at.
That's cool. Yeah, I was somehow expecting you could just keep going, but yeah, there is limitation to your
Good,
space.
but then you would just fall off the edge of the model.
Yeah,
It
'cause
just goes
it's-
into a free fall.
It's probably flat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, So that's the game. Let's see if we're missing anything else here. No. So there's a service that we could look into. There's the plugins that you've been using, and deal set. So we've played the game. It's cool. And eventually what we want to do, like probably after you've showed us how it works, we'll just send a link that everyone can use and we can all like kind of fight for like controlling the character. But for now,
Yeah.
let's switch to your screen and see how you actually get this to work. You probably have to reshare your screen on Skype because I've taken over.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that. Let me figure out how to get it going.
Cool. Okay, I'll switch to your screen. Nice.
Okay. So, a little background into how it's built. Outside of using Postman as the client, right? So we're invoking the commands through Postman. We're sending them to a service. The service itself is built in C#. It's a ASP.NET Core. We stayed pretty Microsoft-centric in this stack because Unity itself is built on Microsoft technologies and uses C# as its primary language. So to keep everything somewhat similar, we've done that, and we're using SignalR. So SignalR is essentially a real-time connection that is created between the game and the service. So while we're able to call the service from Postman like I said, we call the service from Postman. Postman needs to make sure, or the service needs to make sure that the actions are sent in real time to the game. So that's where that SignalR plugin comes in as a kind of a layer between the two.
So SignalR kind of lives in Heroku, and Postman sends to SignalR, and SignalR sends to the game.
Yeah, more or less. So what Postman is sending is just a post request to a controller, and the controller itself is an endpoint. So that endpoint that you pasted in the environment variable hits that controller. That controller itself is aware of the SignalR hub and invokes the command to the connected client. So the whole reason you paste in that ID is because that's the ID of the client. So the controller sends the command in real time to the client, and then Unity or the published game has to pick up on that command and then do something with it. So that's more or less where we come in here. So inside of Unity or the game itself, we can receive that JSON in real time, but we have to do something with it, right? Because JSON is just JSON. We're getting more or less just an array of or an object of keys and values, and then we got to figure out how we can apply that to the game.
Yeah.
So here we are in Unity, and this is just a basic setup. So everything you were just viewing was built in just a basic scene here. So I was talking about the terrain.
Can you quickly say what's Unity for people that are not like familiar with it?
Totally, yeah. So Unity 3D, it's just that it's a 3D game development platform. It's been around for some number of years. I think I started using it on like version 4 back in like 2013, and have I've never been a professional game developer. I think we should preface that in that this is just kind of fun. This is hobby dev, but a very powerful game development platform. That ties together really all of the different facets of game development, and that you're able to create scenes, import models, apply characteristics to those models, and then control it through, whether it's some built-in functionality in the editor or code itself. In this case, we're using code to control pretty much everything.
And so you've got the scene in the middle, then the game, I guess, is the real life, like the live view as if you were playing it, and then your assets at the bottom.
So if I launch it, we might get an error because I have some stuff commented out at the moment, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, okay, it starts just fine. So so you can see over here, this is the live game. So this is what you just played. It's just not a fully built version of it yet because we're going to have to add in the things to make it a fully built version. But what we've got is at least that. We've got the scene, we've got the Postman, and we've got the ability to make a connection and display that connection name. So once again, the first part of the endpoint is the address of where the app lives, where the service lives on Heroku. And then the second part is the ID. So the ID is something that was unique when I launched the app, they created unique connections. So if I send actions to that client ID on the service, it knows, okay, that's my client. I'm going to send that. Now, right now, I'm the only person who has a handle on this client ID, but like you said, at the end of it, whether it's running right here in my editor or whether it's running in someone's web, if we share that, anyone who has that client ID can then send commands to it, so it can become a free for all. So that's what we'll do.
Yeah, we should. There should be another stream where you add more characters and you have like different people controlling different characters, but on the same instance.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be.
version 2.0, the true
Yeah.
multiplayer. I think we need to add some objectives because while we say it's a game, it's really just us making a an astronaut dance.
It can be a
There's
very like soothing game, like when you don't have an objective and you just walk around like indefinitely. Has to be some
yeah,
type of game like this.
spacewalk.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, so I think as far as how we can add in different ways to control it, we could sort of go down the list. But when you were showing your instance of it, you were seeing that there was a user, there was a direction, and there was an action that we were performing. So the logical way is to just kind of walk through each of those and add them in as something that can be performed. Um, I'd say the easiest would be to start with direction. We'll show the code. We'll kind of walk through the code that would need to be added, and then kind of do it one at a time. And then you can just ask me a bunch of questions along the way.
I will.
And
And anyone in the chat as well, like if you have any questions for Evan or for me, so I can ask them to him as well. Just go ahead.
great. All right. So we've got 6 classes. What you're looking at here is just an instance of Visual Studio. So Visual Studio Community is the preferred editor for Unity, and the language that you're looking at is C Sharp. So we've definitely got a lot of boilerplate code here. There's just not enough time on the street or on this stream to walk through every bit of it. But there's also a lot of missing pieces which we're going to start adding in. So for service actions, we can see that in the game itself we have a game object that we've called actions, and we've tied this script to it. On that script, we've designated what the URL of the SignalR hub is. So it's that service plus action hub. And then that action hub is going to send its actions to a listener called receive action. So as the client, if I have a listener called receive action, I can then take the JSON data that's been passed to the service and do something with it. So the script itself, service actions, is over here. And let me pull something up. Okay. So within service actions, what we already have, you saw this. We have references to some different game objects. For instance, we have endpoint, which references the endpoint bar. The endpoint bar is what was sitting at the top of the scene. So we have to be able to display that new connection that's been made so that you can copy it and make use of it. And then outside of that, we just create a new instance of the library that is able to communicate with SignalR. That library, while it's being used by the game, is also a separate repository that's on my GitHub. So if you're super interested in the inner workings of how you can communicate through SignalR within Unity, that's a whole nother repo and a whole nother stream.
So is quick question, is like everything works with like game object? Is it any script needs to be attached to a game object and then you can do actions with it, or can you have like a global script
So
which has like different actions?
yeah, so to initialize the script, it needs to be attached to a game object. This script, at least, right? So I've got that actions game object, and I've got the script attached to it. So we're actually going to be calling the further actions through the start method. So whenever the scene starts, if you have a script attached to a game object, it's going to call the start method. And then the start method just runs top to bottom for the different things that you've designated as things that need to occur at the beginning of that scene. So since we're calling things like the initialization of the library and the reference to the endpoint bar in the start method, then we'll have those as soon as the scene is launched. Endpoint, what's going on there is you can see on the UI, Let's open up Canvas, endpoint bar. So you can see that on the endpoint bar, which is part of my UI canvas, that there's going to be a couple of different things. There's placeholder, there's text, and there should be an input field. So since that lives in the same scene, what I'm saying is to make a reference to that endpoint bar, I'm going to have my game object find something named endpoint bar, case in point, endpoint bar. It's going to find that, and then it's going to get a component from that game object called endpoint bar. So that's actually a reference to a script that's attached to the endpoint bar. So if you scroll down, you can see right here there's another script. There's the endpoint bar script, which is going to be how I send the connection ID to this game object to then be displayed. And then there's also the plugin, the WebGL copy and paste plugin, which I did not create. There is a link to that in the GitHub repo. But on the web, for some reason, you can't just automatically copy and paste from an input. So there's a guy on GitHub that created a nice little plugin for that, and it works pretty well.
So what does it do? Does it just like allow for a right-click copy, or is it just you left-click it and it copies automatically?
Just standard keyboard shortcuts,
Okay.
however you would normally do it. Yeah, if you highlight it, you can. I don't think you will get any right-click action out of it, but you can do Control C, and then get the copy action from it, which that works natively in the editor. It just doesn't work on the web. So there's a plugin. Some decision they made
Yeah,
or forgot to.
it has to be some security or just someone somewhere that forgot about that.
It happens. Yeah, okay. So what we want to do is once we've created that SignalR library instance, we want to subscribe to two different events. We want to know that the connection has started, and we want to know that a message has been received. So these are methods that are available through the library. And when you subscribe to them, whenever something happens in real time from the service that sends it to this client, they will come through these two subscribers. So the connection started method is going to get called one time whenever the scene is started, and I'm going to get my connection event args. Essentially, all my connection event args is a connection ID, because I need to know, okay, I've established a connection with the hub. I have a unique ID, but if I don't get a handle on that, it's useless, because then I can't do anything with it. So I've got that. I take that connection ID and I send it to the endpoint bar. So we've made that reference to the endpoint bar, and we're going to update the URL displayed on the endpoint bar. So I was saying that on the endpoint bar, there was a script attached to it. Well, this is the script that was attached to it. So we'll get the component of the input field, which also lives on the endpoint bar. So we get the component of the input field, and then we're going to make a reference and then change the text of that endpoint field to the URL I just passed to it. So, ta-da, that's step one.
Almost done.
Yeah, a little ways to go.
Yeah, the SR-lib looks very like WebSockety, right? It's like subscribe to a.
It's exactly what it is. So SignalR is sort of an abstraction of WebSockets.
Okay.
I won't speak too much to it because I'm not a SignalR pro either. But that's it. I do have some experience in writing different C# utilities that do make use of SignalR. So the idea is just that it's sort of an abstraction of raw WebSockets that allows you to communicate through Microsoft-centric applications in real time. I think it has some fallback capabilities. If it's unable to connect via the WebSocket, it can make use of other methods to ensure that connection stays live and then can receive information. But yeah, no, you're right on point. You subscribe to it, and then you basically sit there and listen to be invoked. Case in point, message received. So with message received, we're going to get our message event args. And the message event args, in this case, sort of like the connection event args or a connection ID, the message event args are a message. And that message, we have created the service to pass as JSON. So it's JSON coming from Postman, it's JSON when it gets to the service, and it's JSON when it gets to the game. So we keep it really simple going across. But we just need to make use of it. We need to do something with it. So I do have a class. This is what I would consider a plain old C# object. I've called it action command. So I instantiate a new action command, and then using the Unity JSON utility, I can create an actual C# object extracted from the JSON string that was passed in. So we've got our message as a JSON string. From that JSON, we are going to apply the action command to the object itself. So if we look at action command, we can see that nothing's been created yet. I have a serializable, just plain class. So the first step here, since we're going to focus on direction, would be to add a direction string. So rather than to do, we can go ahead and create a public string.
So just to be clear, that's not like the code that you're showing right now without the to-dos. Or with the to-dos not done is not what's actually in production, right? We're just going to rewrite some bits of the app.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly. Yeah. So rather than try and think through this in 30 minutes in front of everybody, this is something that was created a while back, and then I updated a little bit yesterday. But yeah, we're essentially just going back through the steps that were used to create it. So we've got the direction. So we'll start with that. So to do direction, okay? So we need to create an instance of the player. We need to get a handle on the player so that we can pass a direction command to the player. So up here you can see I have to do player actions. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a private player control, and we're going to call it player. So player control is a reference to another script that I have that is attached to the Postman itself. So player control is basically everything you saw happening. It's variables that dictate how quickly it should walk, run, turn, whether there's gravity applied to it, what directions forward, back, left, and right. But right now it's basically that. It's basically an outline to what would be necessary to make use of that character, but it's not actually performing anything yet. So we have two public methods. We have set direction and perform action. So set direction is what we're going to target at the moment. So we've got a variable type of player, but we need to create a reference to the actual player that's on the scene. So in the same with the same idea that we're finding the endpoint and getting the component of endpoint bar, which is a script, we're going to do that with player. So we'll do player equals game object dot find, and it's not lowercase, it's capital, game object dot find. Okay, so we're going to find that game object by name from what's in the scene. So within the scene, I have a character called Postman. So Postman is the game object I'm going to look to find, and then player controls the script attached to that Postman that I'm going to make reference to. So we'll find Postman, and we'll get the component, and we will make the component player control, and boom. So we have a reference to the player. So much like we can pass data to the endpoint that can be displayed, we can pass data to the player to do something. So at this point, with that reference, if we go down to where I want to apply the direction, we can see that there is an action available for use. So player has that public method, which is direction. So we'll look for autocomplete set direction, and we'll want to pass in action dot direction. Action, once again, is a reference to action command. So currently we've only got one property on that, which is direction. So we've created an instance of action command with the JSON that we get passed. The direction variable will get assigned, but we will also want to safeguard this. So just in case we pass through something that doesn't have a direction variable in the JSON, we won't call it. So we'll just do if not string dot is null or empty, and then we're going to check. So it fails somewhat gracefully if direction doesn't get applied. We can call action.direction as long as that variable does live in action command. But if it's empty, we're not going to try and pass an empty string to set direction and try and turn in an empty direction. So there's safeguard number one. That's pretty much all that we need from this end. So sort of a recap, we've made the connection, we've got a reference to the player in the scene, we've got a listener for the message, and when we get a message that has a direction as a part of the JSON, then we want to set it. Boom. And that's where I defer to you, or let me to see if any of that made sense, or if I'm moving too quick or too slow.
No, that made sense. I think I should have spent more time on Postman showing what's actually being sent, because I know I've just been like sending random requests with the endpoint and my name, but I didn't actually show the data that was sent. And I think like if you actually look at the JSON that's being sent, that would probably make more sense, because you're actually I see like you're accessing the like direction variable in the JSON, etc. But yeah, so if you actually show what's actually being sent, which I should have done.
And we could go back to sort of the collaborative approach, which is if we share your screen. Can we both be sharing screens?
No,
I'm not sure
it's
okay.
one at a time.
Gotcha. Easy enough. So you were inside of Postman and you were sending this. These are very simple requests that are being sent. So the endpoint is an environment variable, that makes reference to that client ID. But the payload itself is just a body of JSON. So depending on how complex the command that you're wanting to send across is, that dictates how much JSON you're sending. So user is a variable we will be sending and setting up. So the username is from that environment variable. So Postman allows you to use environment variables all throughout, whether it's in the request bar, in the body itself, in the test that you may be wanting to perform on the response of the request. And then we're going to add in just the other things, which are we want to perform a particular action or turn a particular direction. But this body is raw and it's JSON. So much like we were trying to export the collection as raw JSON from GitHub, JSON can do a lot of things. For anyone who's not in development or not very JavaScript or web centric, JSON is essentially a string that also serves as a data structure that allows you to nest data and then make use of it as we're doing in the game.
Yeah, I think
it's very.
I think that helps with like understanding what you do better on the like scripting side, because like actually now you know what you're trying to catch in like these different like action and direction, etc.
Yeah, it makes sense in my head, but you're right. It was kind of this like invisible entity that's being sent from Postman. So yeah, it's just text. I mean, you're sending a JSON string, you're catching that JSON string in the controller or endpoint on the service, and then the service passes that in real time to the game. So we've got, we'll focus on direction. So turn forward is just that. It's just making use of a direction, turning forward. So now we want the Postman not to do that because we've received it, we've passed it here, we're going to get that as direction. So at this point, it's no longer JSON. It's just stripped from the JSON the direction we want to turn. So with that, we can add in the player control. So the first thing to do is I want to be able to apply this direction by name as simply as possible and in as few lines of code as possible. So what I set up here was a dictionary. So a dictionary, also known as a hash map in many other languages, is a way to apply a key to a variable and then get a value in return. So you can set up a system of keys and values. So in this case, the key is going to be a string, float's going to be the value. We'll be able to call the value by the string name, which is going to be the direction we want to turn, and then it's going to pass back the float value. So I've already defined what the float should be for the rotation of the character to be looking forward, back, left, or right. Once again, if we went into the scene on Unity, that's something that basically I had to take into respect where he's looking to start and what we would consider, forward, back, left, or right. So since he's starting facing the moon, or planet or whatever you feel like that is. Um, he's starting at a negative 90-degree angle. So forward, back, left, and right are all based on that, uh, based on how much rotation would need to occur to go in those directions. So these, you don't call variables from their string name normally, but you can call variables from a dictionary or hash map by their string name. So I put it to do here. So the easiest thing to do would be to apply all four of these directions right now. So we'll call forward, which is what's going to get passed through, and then that is going to apply to the forward variable. Okay, and then we can just put a comma and do the next one. I'm gonna do some copy and pasting here to make this quick. Yeah, so we'll do
The best type of programming.
Well, we're on a limited time frame here. I'm already thinking I might have left a little too much for us to do. We'll get there. Teamwork.
You probably have one too many commas there, right? On the last line.
On the last line. Good call. So that should do it. That's all we need from our dictionary to be able to get these variables by name. So for set direction, to be able to set the direction, we want to change the rotation variable based on the direction that we've passed in. So we've got a float rotation that starts as forward and then will be applied to this straight off of the Unity documentation way to rotate the game object. So don't ask me about what all of these Euler angles and everything mean, but I do know that according to the documentation, if I apply the rotation at this as this argument, then that's going to allow me to cause the transform to rotate.
Actually, I think another thing that's good to show. So you talked about how there's the start function, and now you're on the update one, and so the update one is it's kind of like the Android programming, right? Like you've got this one is called every frame, and whatever happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I think the Android is actually a great comparison because it's the game loop. It's the life cycle of the frames getting called. So there's actually different update methods that exist within Unity. There's standard update, there's late update, there's fixed update. Once again, if you're curious, go to the documentation. It explains sort of with respect to the physics that are occurring in the scene at what point these updates get called. But it's just a continuous loop. You can actually, view the update method much like the application loop on an Android application. The game loop is continuously called, and then that's the reason that things look like they're occurring in real time. Because if I call rotation, then it's going to rotate with respect to where it currently is and then slowly rotate towards what the target is. So I've created a target, which is an angle compared to where I'm at, and then for each call of the game loop update method, it's going to slowly rotate until it hits that target.
Yeah, I remember. So I used to do I think we talked about it before, like doing virtual reality stuff with Unity, and I've never done as much math as I had to do with Unity when in my whole programming career. Like doing all these angle calculation and stuff was fun, maybe. I don't know how to. I don't know how to put it.
Euler angles and slurping towards something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Unity at times, especially if you're getting into, creating really smooth graphics, it can require some thought, like I said, mathematically, as to how you apply it and get it there. But luckily, the documentation's really good. The community's huge. So, and like I said earlier in the conversation, it's been around for so long that if you have a question and you Google it, there's probably someone who has some sort of answer. But beware, it's been around long enough that what was a good answer maybe 6 years ago might not be a good answer in 2020. So make sure you're keeping respect to the version that you're getting the answer from. But yeah, so we want to apply the rotation direction based on what we've just passed in through our string. So in the JSON, we don't need to know from Postman what the actual float would be to have that proper direction in the scene. We just know we want to look forward. So I had already set that forward in this case is -90, which I had shown you in the game scene is -90. Excuse me. That dictionary applies the string forward to the forward variable. So now we just need to say that rotation equals directions, which is our dictionary direction. So we call that dictionary value by key, and directions direction. The variable direction will be the string either forward, back, left, or right, and rotation will be set to that. And on the next iteration of the game loop, it will create that angle and start slurping towards that rotation. And it happens really quick in real time. Can't say for sure how many times the update loop would get called before it actually gets there. And that's that. So we could actually test this out now because if you haven't noticed, I'm turning to my right. I do have some notes on.
I've noticed. I didn't want to let people know. I was like, no, it's fine. It's just like, all do we need? He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I have a pretty good idea. I mean, I did write it, but I also have I have source control, so I can look at the missing pieces of my code from source control, and that's exactly what I'm doing. So yeah, so we've got that. We'll go ahead and save it. So at this point, we'll get our endpoint. We'll be able to apply that to Postman. And then we will pass in a direction, see if it's null or empty. If it's not, we'll set that direction to the rotation of directions based on that string value. Ta-da. So
okay,
let's go ahead and kick off the scene. Fingers crossed we don't get an error, which we shouldn't. Okay, so we've got him over here. And you know what? I'll actually kick it off for a minute. We'll go to maximize on play because I'm assuming on the shared screen you can hardly see what's going on. Yeah, so
Nice.
Here's the game. So at this point we can take what's in the endpoint bar. We can go to Postman. And this is going to be a little more annoying during development in that when you get a new connection, you have to apply that to the variable. In real time, it's a one-time thing because the actual game, you would just launch it once and then get that endpoint. I know Danny, if he's on the stream, he's not a fan of having to paste this in every time. So he and I will collaborate at some point to make this an easier process. Maybe actually create user accounts where you don't always have to copy it, but it just knows what user has what connection.
We'll get you a run in Postman button that auto-generates the collection with the right endpoint. That should be feasible.
Yeah, 100%. Anything's possible. It's just how much time do you want to spend doing it, right? Okay, so we've got the endpoint set. So we've got the direction forward. We've got the game over here. So I'm not going to pass in the username yet. It wouldn't be a big deal if we did because it's not trying to make use of it or anything. But we will send the forward command and, well, he's already forward, so that doesn't make much sense. But we could try.
So Danny confirms he's not a fan.
Okay, so he is there. That was more of a test to see if Danny was listening. All right, so we'll do right, and then we'll do back. Ta-da!
Hello.
So we've got full rotation. We've got full branding. That's basically where we always want to end this. We always want to end it with him facing to the back, so we get our branding in there.
Yeah, we'll use that as a thumbnail when we post the video. It's like a good old Postman logo.
Yeah, it's a logo of himself, more or less.
Did you pick this character because he was orange as well, or is it mostly for the Postman art? I mean, it actually fits like perfectly the brand.
Yeah, so I actually adjusted some of the different color levels. Oh, someone's controlling him.
I wonder who.
If it's Danny doing it, that's wild because that
he had to copy the whole thing. Yeah,
he had to copy this whole string.
I can see him doing that, but I can. We always have people on the streams like we've done that before, where there was like saying it was like a UUID that you had to copy, and before we had time to paste it in the chat, like people were like sending comments to it. So you never know. But yeah, that's
crazy.
like
And it's so small. I can hardly see it at 125%. So that's talent. Whoever did that. We'll actually paste it in the chat whenever we get done, so everybody can start going crazy with it. Yeah, I don't even know where we're at. Oh, the Postman. Yeah, So there's materials that get applied to a 3D model. Once again, not a modeler by any means, but I sort of understand how they work. In that a 3D model is more or less just like a series of vertices to which a material can be applied. Someone's still turning him.
It's not Danny, he says. So
It's not.
someone.
I don't know how many are even on the stream, but kudos to you. Speak up if you want to be known. Actually, well, we will know because we're going to apply the user log here in a minute.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what we do next. But yeah, so basically I adjusted the materials to have colors a little bit closer to the Postman branding. But as far as having a ready to go 3D astronaut model, I just really lucked out that there was a free asset on Unity. And like I said, if you want to give that person any business or use it for yourself, it is on the GitHub repo. It's a company called Pulsar Bytes. They've got really quality assets for sure. So there's their plug.
Joyce is asking for a link. But this one is not production ready yet.
Yeah, so the link's going to disappear in about 3, 2, 1. Okay, so since I killed that game instance, that link is no longer relevant. But we'll make it relevant here in a minute when we actually launch the finished product.
John's work alias doing that. So John, and it's gone. It's gone. Yeah, he just pasted the link for them to use. Give us 5. We'll walk through the whole adding the user log, like the username. And then we actually go back to the production one and we can all play with it. How does that sound? Good? Yeah. We also had Text Explorer that was just finished like typing the URL. Okay, let's do that. Let's do cool. Username and then go back to prod.
Yeah. So we can do username and we can do, actually, how much time do we have left?
We have like until 12:30 your time. Wait,
okay.
Until 1:30 your time. I don't know which time zone you're on. I always forget.
it'll be 2:30. So you're
okay.
You said what part of the UK are you in? You're in London, correct?
Yeah, London. So it's 8 for me now. 8 p.m.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So burning that midnight oil, or that 8 o'clock oil, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what we can do then, because I mean we do have a little more time to kill, is we will go to production. But I think what's the most fun is not necessarily the direction, but actually applying the action. So the action is going to be walk, run, idle, and flip. And to do that, I can quickly show how you can apply an animation to a character, and then how we can call that animation from code. A lot of the plumbing has already been explained, so we'll be able to get through it a little bit faster because you already know how we make the connection. You already know how we receive the JSON. So right here, we'll just apply that same thing. So in this case, we can start sending the action JSON. So action dot
action.
Well, it'll be action dot perform. So they perform an action and then they do it in a particular direction. To do that, we'll have to go back to the action command, apply another string, perform. So then if we do action dot perform, then instead of dot set direction, we will do dot perform action. So once again, doing a little error handling. Is it null?
Like a good old like error catching, obviously like resurfacing for the user that something went wrong.
Yeah. Just throw an absolute ridiculous error. Nah, that doesn't really do a lot of error throwing at all. It either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't receive JSON that it can make use of, it doesn't error out. It just doesn't. So that's kind of the point. Is that it either works or it doesn't. The one sort of guarantee that I have is I do have this ping. So if you're curious as to whether the connection ID you've pasted in is actually a live connection ID, then you can ping it and it'll say yes or no.
Yeah, for V2 we can have the actual Postman talking the errors out, and you can have like a bubble that goes out and says like console log whatever the error was.
That's actually really creative. I mean, I was just thinking a console log, but yeah, why not make the speech bubble the console? I like that. All right, we're getting you in. Getting you in on this, and getting the community in on this as well, because I've got limited time to work on this type of stuff these days. All right, so to perform that action, we will start applying some certain commands. Give me a second here. Okay, so in player control for perform action, we're going to make use of a classic switch statement. So with the switch, we will switch on the action, and now we can create cases. So in the case of it being idle, we will do stuff and things. For the moment, we're just going to break it until I show you how we're actually going to apply these animations. Don't need a colon there. We need 4 different cases. So we'll have idle, walk, run, and flip. So idle, walk, run, and flip. So right now, nothing will happen. We can enter the action block. We can look at the case of what the string that we passed in is, so what the action is. And then we're currently just breaking before we accidentally fall into the next case statement, which is a good programming tip to anybody who's using case statements. Don't forget your break because it will fall into the next block. As far as how we're going to apply the animation, we can go into the scene. So the Postman has a character controller attached to it and an animator attached to it. So the character controller is actually how we're applying movement and rotation, but the animator is going to be how we apply animations that, lucky for me, came with the asset itself. So the asset has several different baked-in animations, but that doesn't exactly dictate how those animations get applied or when you transition in and out of that, in or out of that animation. So for that, we've got our animator window. I can try and make this a little bit larger so everybody can see it.
Nice.
We can blow this up. Okay, so we've got our animator window. We'll zoom in a little bit. And this is fun. We're basically going to create sort of a state machine. So we'll add in a couple of parameters. So the animator allows you to have parameters that are of different variable types, and then based on the value you give that parameter, you can transition to and from different states of animation. So we will apply 2 as bools. We'll do walk, and we'll do run. Okay, those are going to be false by default because we just want to sit idle by default. Idle. So within idle, there's nothing that even really has to be happening. It just needs to be a default state. So then within the layer, we're just going to make use of our base layer. We don't need to create any additional layers because this isn't complex animation, but we do need to create different states. So we'll create a state, and we'll call it walk. Sadly, in this view, I can't see the toolbar that I need to change the state. We'll come over here. We'll make it just big enough for everybody to see. Okay, so new state is now going to be called walk, walk. So walk is something that can be transitioned to using that bool value, but it's also going to need to transition out of it. So as far as the motion that walk represents, we can click on that, and it's going to give us the animations that are available. So we will use walk. So we've got a state called walk with the motion of walk. How do we get to it? So from idle, we will make a transition to walk, and then from walk, we will make a transition to idle. We're going to do this based on a condition. So we're going to uncheck has exit time, and it's going to tell me, well, I either need a condition or an exit time. So this is going to go to walk if the bool walk is true. And then guess how we're going to get out of it? Well, we are going to transition to idle if the bool walk is false. And it's really that simple. So it's simple in that I have an asset with an animation. I've got a state that uses that animation. I transition to it when walk is true, transition to it, out of it when walk is false. And then we're just going to repeat that for run. So we're going to create another empty state. We're going to call this one run. We're going to apply run. We'll transition to it without an exit time.
That seems super easy even, I feel like. I don't know if it didn't exist when I used to do Unity or if I didn't know about it, but that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, the animator is fascinating. Creating animations, I mean, hats off to people who actually, are capable of creating these models and believable animations because that's definitely outside of my realm. But as far as Unity's ability to make use of those animations, yeah, the animator window in the states that you're able to make use of, it makes it really easy, and we'll see here in a second um, how easily that can be applied through code. It really doesn't take a lot of thinking from your end other than walk needs to be true or false and run needs to be true or false. You can even see that in creating this transition, it's created sort of a default um, logical path of how it can go from one animation to the next. I didn't really even have to think through that. I'm just going to take the defaults and we will go. Last but not least, for flip, so flip in my mind is not so much a state, right? So a state would be we're idle, we're walking, or we're running. But if we want to flip, we can do that in any state. We can flip while we're idle and we can flip in any direction going at any speed. So we'll create another state and we'll call it flip just so that we can have, and I can't
Flop.
type today. Uh, yeah, so we'll apply the flip motion. This is something we're just going to invoke by name, and then we just need to transition out of it. And for that, we'll just use the default exit time. So basically, once it flips, it automatically transitions back to idle. So we'll call flip. It'll say, okay, use my exit time, and in the time it takes to finish performing that action, we'll transition back to idle. Boom. So we've got three different animations set up, and more or less a state machine built around it. So how do we apply that through code? Well, very simply. So we'll move this window back to there, and we'll go in here. So I set up my switch statement. Um, what I need to make use of is the animator. So anim is a variable that I have at the top of the class. It is of type animator. And surprise, surprise, in my start method, when I'm setting up the scene, I need to get the component animator. Now, this may look a little bit different to anyone who was watching my service actions, because in here, I'm finding a game object and getting its component. That's based on the fact that service action is just a standalone game object that needs to find other stuff in the scene and say, hey, do the stuff, do the things. In this particular instance, we are calling a component of the object that we already are on. So this script lives on the Postman. It's right here, player control, boom. So that has a character controller and an animator already on the game object itself. So I just need that particular component of the game object, which is the animator. Okay, so anim is what I'm able to make use of. Within that, anim has several methods available to it, but since I showed you how we were setting up the different bool states, ta-da, set bool. We'll make use of that, and then we'll just call it by name. So if I'm idle, I don't want walk to be true, so we'll set false, nor do I want run to be true, because if I'm idle, I'm not doing either of those things. In the case of walking and running, we can basically just copy this over and set them either to true or false. So if I'm walking, let's first set run to false and then walk to true. And then if I'm running, let's set walk to false and then run to true. Last but not least, for flip, I don't need to change any of the states, but I do want the animator to play.
So when you come out of flip, you said you go straight to idle. So it means if I was walking and then I do a flip, it will end the walk animation and it will revert to idle.
No. So yes and no. So that's kind of the glory of our state machine, is that when you flip, it transitions to idle, but idle will transition to or from walk based on what bools are set. So if I flip and then transition to idle, it will immediately transition out of idle to either walk
Okay.
or run if walk or run is still set to true or false. So if I never set walk or run to false, then once it flips, it says idle. But it doesn't sit in idle for long because it's going to choose which direction to go based on what bools are alive. If both of these are false, it just stays idle.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it's actually pretty cool if you watch it in real time. If we leave the animator open and we don't maximize the game, you can actually watch the animator in real time get invoked through the script, call a transition, and then make a decision on which direction to go. So as far as debugging goes, that's a pretty good. We don't have to do that today, but that's a pretty good tip too. If you're curious why it is or is not doing what you want it to do, um, watch the animator, watch it in real time, see what it's doing. And that's what's cool about Unity too, is that if you're in a scene and you don't maximize the game itself, you can manipulate the scene in real time while you're playing the game to see if certain things you do in the scene have an effect on the game itself. So, uh, it's
Okay.
a level of debugging, but it's more physical debugging, but it works well. So once we play that, we don't have to do anything else because our state machine handles the rest. The last thing to do would be to set the speed variable based on whether it's idle, walk, or run. So we do have speed being referenced. So we have movement, rotation, speed. Speed is going to be depending on what transform forward is. So depending on our rotation, we'll consider forward the direction that they're facing, which is the forward facing point of the transform. Transform being the character itself. Then we apply a speed to it. So on each game loop, we'll apply that movement based on the current speed. So we just need to change that speed variable based on what we're doing. So if we're idle, speed equals, take a guess, Arlemy.
0.
Boom.
That was
Easy
a.
enough.
You actually caught me off guard there, and I was like, oh, what?
Negative one.
So
Yeah,
Johnny's saying Chuck Norris would just go from flip to run. That is true. I don't know, or he would just like flip once and revolve around the earth once,
I was gonna
probably.
say I don't think that would happen. I think yeah, he would just continue to flip. I mean, once the flip started, it would just never end. Just flip through the world and flip through his enemies. Uh, that's what we should create, the Postman not Chuck Norris edition. Real quick, we'll just apply speed as walk speed and run speed for these other two. So speed equals run speed, and we're good there. And if you're curious what these are set at the top of the class. So if you're in a class, you can see that some are public and some are private. Encapsulation is, a concept used in programming in C# that kind of controls what access you have to variables. But that said, in Unity, public and private is pretty simple. If it's public, you can see it in the editor. If it's private, you can't. So I can set default values for these so that anyone who pulls down the game will have, variables set by default. But if I actually go to the player in the game and look at player control, you can see these are all of my public variables. So it's really cool the way that Unity applies those variables to the editor that you could change right here. So without even changing it in the script, if I'm working on the game and I feel like I need to adjust these variables to go a little bit faster, go a little bit smoother, go a little bit slower, you can do it right from here. So these are all the public variables from that class. And
That's
then,
another idea for V2 where you can initiate your own game with these variables as you want them. Like you can change the gravity, you can change
oh
the
yeah,
default speed. Yeah, that's I'm writing them down, and we'll get to them at some point.
yeah. Hopefully there's a time and a demand for it. But yeah, anyone who pulls it down, yeah, I mean the simplest change, run speed, if you change that from 10 to 15, is going to be night and day in this instance. You can see walk is 3, run is 10. So
Yeah,
imagine what like 15 or 20 would be. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We've got those. I already defined those, so I can apply the speed based on what those are, based on what the state is. So now we have everything we need to perform an action. Um, so we will do that, and then we will get to the public usage of the game real quick. So let's just make sure that works. So if I want to maximize it and launch it, okay. So we'll go to Postman, apply that variable, and we will do something that requires an action like walk,
so chat,
send it.
don't need to like copy this URL. It's gonna change soon.
Yeah, yeah, slow down. We'll run through the log part real fast so that we have time for everyone to play it. But you can see he's walking. So at this point, walk is a single performance, but we can also do a performance and a direction. So if we want to walk forward, well, we're already doing that. But what if we want to walk backwards? Well, we'll send that, and he turns around and he walks. So we've got that working. So we've got our actions and our directions. Last but not least would be to apply the log so that when we're in real time with other people playing, we know who did what and not mystery guy from the chat making my guy go different directions, but we're like, who did it? So we'll apply that real fast. So the last thing to do would be to add an action command property for the user. Okay. Actions log is what we're going to make use of. So within the UI on the canvas, I've got the endpoint bar. I need to create a UI text. With that, I've already got a prefab. So within Unity, prefabs are more or less game objects that have been created and can be reused throughout scenes, or in this case, applied to a scene that it's missing from. So actions log is now applied to my canvas, which is anything that appears on the UI and not so much in the game. Actions log will have the script attached to it, and it will have a text component. So in the same way that we're finding the UI input for the input bar, or the endpoint bar, and then creating that reference and applying the text, we're going to do that for the actions log real quick. And I'm only sort of speeding through this because we're running out of time.
So good. I'm getting hungry, but I can handle it. It's fine.
Yeah, you and me both. All right. So what we're going to do, give me 1 second here. Too many windows open, and I need to get to this script. It's the actions log. Okay, so we'll create a reference to the text object I just pointed out. We'll call it UI text. And then since the script is on the same object as the component, we can just do UI text equals get component text. And then we're going to write out what we would like to see on the scene. So UI text dot text. So it is a text box, but it also has a text property, which is dot text. And going to plus equal, which means we're not going to truncate any of the existing text, but we are going to add more to it. And we can do that through a string template, which is user is action dot user.
So you're not creating these like 3 lines of who's the user, what's the action.
And I'm calling this from service actions. So in the same way that we're taking the JSON and calling the methods from the player object, we're also creating a reference to the actions log. And instead of just passing a particular piece of the JSON, like whether I want to perform it or whether I want to go a direction, I'll pass in the entire JSON because I need all 3 pieces of it.
Yeah.
So that's also necessary, which is within service actions. We just need to make a quick reference to what we're using, which is equals actions log. And we're getting the component from it, which is actions log. Okay, so we've got our variable, we've created a reference to it, and then right here we're going to call actions log dot add entry, and then just pass in all of the JSON,
the whole
which
thing,
in this is action. And then here, like you said, we're going to just make 3 lines. User and direction. And we'll do action dot direction. And we don't need a plus at the end because we're done, but we do need 2 of these. So \n is just a representation of inline. So that ends the line, goes to the next, and the line goes to the next, and then this ends it twice so that the next entry has two spaces. And that more or less should be what we need to get that done. I don't think I have any other to-dos. We added those. We added those. Player control, we added those. Actions command has user direction perform, and then we didn't touch endpoint bar or camera follow. So from here, we'll do one last local launch, make sure that we can do it, and then we'll switch over to the public one, and we've got a few minutes to play around on that. So if I go to Postman, which I have collapsed very small.
Yeah, I was talking earlier about how if you're like in a very small window, Postman becomes not unusable, but you have to scroll a lot to get like access to the actions you want to take. So there's a minimum required for using Postman.
I think it's mentioning that to make this viewable to everybody else, I've got my screen at like 50% of what it would normally be. So I usually work on a little bit with a little bit more real estate. So at this point, we pasted that in, so let's walk left. Okay, so he's walking left, and you can see that the user, Evan Lindsey, performed walk and in the direction of left.
Nice.
That's it. We've got a game. We added in our animations, we added in our actions log, and then slowly but surely we added in the missing pieces of code. And I kind of tried to highlight on, why these are being applied and sort of how these can all live together. But yeah, if you want to switch back over to your screen, Arlemy, we can launch it on the web, and then everybody can start sending their actions in if they'd like.
Let's do that. Let me start sharing on Skype. And switch here. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen. So I still have, it didn't move from before. I have Postman with the collection created. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go back to the one that here. Major Tom has been doing things apparently. Okay, so anyone that has joined since, the first thing you need to do, and I'm going to paste that in chat, is go to that URL and grab the Postman collection, which is here. So you can click here and then row, and you can take this URL and import it into Postman or any other tool that you may use to call APIs, and then you can do link, paste it, and import. So I'm not going to do it because I already have it. The other thing is I will share the endpoint of this one. Paste it in chat as well. The second link that I've sent is the endpoint, and what you have to do is either you can replace it directly in each call that you want to do, or you create a new environment like we've done before and replace it here. So I already have the right one. Yeah, I do. I'm really going to use that one. And from there on, I'll put my Postman on the side. Not Danny, he's already playing along. I need to join as well. Let me do my thing.
I'm trying to get in there before it's too late.
We have the real Chuck Norris. Oh, some people are definitely using the collection runner there. Goes way too fast. You put that full screen.
Oh, okay, I got a left in.
Are we gonna break Heroku, you think?
No, I think they can scale out to at least this chat. Maybe at some point I'll have to pay for a better tier, but for now we'll go with the free one.
I think we we reached out the limit on the left, but someone already decided to turn. So I'm guessing if you get null as the user, it's because it's not been filled in, right?
No, I think if you don't pass any user, it just won't
it won't show up.
So I think someone's explicitly passing in null.
Okay.
Let me try it.
What am I going to do? I'm just building my own thing on the collection runner on the side. I'm going to. Oh, I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, look at that. So that's me performing, right? There's no user,
okay.
So someone typed in null as their username.
All right, I've got mine set up. You're not ready.
Oh, you're using the collection runner?
Yeah, it just went crazy. That's pretty good. I'm gonna do it again. Yeah, tester's gonna test.
Tester's gonna test.
And test is for send the value as new. Yeah, I was actually the first time you actually showed the code. You hadn't mentioned the dictionary yet, and I was like, can I try to send like random strings, and we did perform like all the things. But then you actually went into the dictionary, and I was like, okay, guess there is some sort of like boundaries as to what you can send.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah. I mean, if it tries to, I guess, yeah. If at this point, if you do send an action, if you send a perform key in the JSON, so user perform direction, if you perform something that isn't accounted for in the dictionary, yeah, it just throws an internal error in
Yeah.
that it can't find that. It can't find that key, which I should probably safeguard for as well.
So let's
If
see.
it's not one of these things.
We have Javier, we have Rita from Belgium, we have Danny who's saying, screaming out for a gamepad. Actually, so we were talking about that before starting the stream, and there's quite a few things that have changed in the code. But let's see, is it available directly? So what Danny has done is used the visualizer to create just a gamepad that you can use to play the game. Oh, who's doing that? The real Chuck Norris is flipping everywhere.
As you should. As you should.
So let me see if it's published. Not. I'll go here. Templates. Was it be Postman? No. Okay. I'll see if I can find. So I'll leave that up for you to play with, and I'm going to look for on our internal Slack if I can find it, because that was cool.
Yeah, Danny, if you're out there, can you send the link?
Or if you have the link, Danny, and you can send it in chat, then we can try as well.
So what he's looking for is the code for a visualizer. So a visualizer is something that lives in Postman where you can send a request and basically get back a visual as described by the response. And then you can use that visual to do different things. So in this case, Danny actually created a visualizer of a gamepad. Of course, it's a gamepad he found on CodePen, but he was able to apply the different requests to the different elements of the gamepad and use it to send requests across to the service. So
I
really
couldn't
cool.
find the collection, but I found the video, which is this one. So that's the V0.1 of the game, and that was Danny did with the visualizer. So you've got your controller, and you can click on the different elements and do the actions. But we won't be able to do it right now. Though if Danny actually sends the collection at some point, I'll add it to the YouTube video descriptions, and you can play around with it later. So before we leave, that's very cool, and I'm very happy that you were able to play with it. I'm going to do my collection runner one more time because I really liked it.
So I'm not signed into Twitch, Arlemi,
Yep.
so I can't respond to the chat. But someone Jettison just asked if we can recommend any resources for Unity noobs.
Yep.
And the answer is yes. If you go to learn.unity.com, you can pull that up for them. We're just giving Unity all kinds of PR on this. Yeah, Unity Learn is where I would start. So outside of the fact that the forums, or whether it's Stack Overflow, Unity's own forums, or just whatever else you find on Google, that's stacked full of information that you can search. But Unity Learn is their own built-in system that I've done a couple of things on. Most of what I learned in Unity was far before any of this was available. But there's great resources, great courses, great tutorials, and I believe during COVID that a lot of this is actually free for people to make use of. So it's worth checking out if you're new to Unity and you just aren't sure where to start.
So actually, while you were saying that, I was sending things to is there a max number of items you can get in your UI text element?
So it's just an infinite scroll. I mean, it's basically it never overflows, so it's going to create the new entries at the bottom and then just push the other entries up. So I mean, however many will fit on the screen are what will are what you will see at the moment. And then as you saw in the code, the template only accounts for user perform and direction.
Yeah. Okay, so really cool, and I'm happy we're able to play with that. Thanks, Evan, for showing us all this. One thing we do before leaving, it's the community shoutouts. So do you have any one that you want to give a shout out for apart from Unity, whether it be in the Postman community, it be in the gaming community, anything that you want to put out there?
Yeah, I didn't know I'd get a chance, so I didn't much make a list. No, I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a professional game developer by any means. It's just something I've played with for years, so I'm really not in the game development community. If you check out my GitHub, which is where this is available, github.com/Evan Lindsey, I've got some fun side projects, but most of what I'm focused on these days is Postman itself. So we've already shouted out Danny, but shout out to Danny for creating the visualizer and helping sort of support this, going from a demo to an even bigger demo. And then, yeah, I don't, on that repo, like I said, the assets for the most part were provided by the publisher Pulsar Bytes. So if you need free Unity assets, that's someone who does a good job. But yeah, outside of that, also shout out to Arlemi for being the best developer advocate that I've had a chance of working with.
Oh, that's an easy one. I'm the only developer advocate at IBM at Postman.
Details.
So we have Jettison, which is actually the other developer advocate on the team, who says no math. Good question. She's asking about the resources for Unity noobs. Does it require math or knowledge or not?
So I think Unity as a whole has made some effort to allow visual scripting tools to be available. For people who maybe aren't C# coders or in that realm. I'm not as familiar with them because I haven't had a chance to use them, but it's worth searching like Unity visual scripting. I'd say in a lot of areas of programming, math isn't necessarily the core of what you're working with unless you're getting to very low-level functions. Something like Unity is, a series of libraries and a framework as a whole that allows you to use really high-level functions that have already done most of this work for you. So as a whole, I mean, no, it's pretty beginner-friendly, I would say.
And then Danny says he sent his controller through Slack, but I don't think we'll have time to look at it, but I'm sure I will include it to the YouTube video. I'm sorry, Danny, please pardon me.
I'll add it to the repo as well. It needs to be a part of the repo, so I'll get it in there.
And then we have TestPro that says thanks, Evan. So in terms of shout out, there's one thing that we had discussed actually like a while ago on Slack when we were talking about gaming. So if gaming is something that you're interested in terms of like retro gaming, there's a link that Evan had shared with me, which is on NRW Gaming, which is a YouTube channel that just does like reviews. Is it reviews of old games that they do?
So it's playthroughs, yeah.
Playthroughs.
So it's new retro wave, which if you're a programmer, you might be familiar with. It's just kind of fun, electronic sort of ambient music. Well, it just depends on which one you click on. But with their gaming stream, or their gaming channel, it's playthroughs of old video games with new retro wave music layered on top of it. So very nostalgic and pretty good background noise.
And the one that I had shared is My Abandonware, which is like resources of old games that you can't really you can't buy, you can't find anywhere, and it's just the resources of like, for example, the first Rayman Arena, which was like released in 2001. So you can actually either play them directly in the browser or download them and play them, which is very cool. Again, it's very I don't know if it's just us two being very nostalgic of like old like gaming experience, or whether anyone else is going to be interested in it. But yeah, that would be my my shout outs for the gaming side. For the Postman side, I'm gonna have a quick look. As always, if you're in the community forum, there's a community showcase where you can see what people have created. There's plenty of stuff out there actually. This one, which is Where's My Tesla? Creating a data API using Kafka, Rockset, and Postman to find out. So if you have a Tesla and you want to use Postman to find where it is, I'd recommend checking that one out. So Nadine has created that, and there's a blog post on their platform that you can go and check out. With that said, let me go back to the talking slide. Let me see if there's any leftover messages. John shared a link as well to software library of MS-DOS games that you can check out.
Oh, that's great.
and Shivam says, we cool. Thank you, Shivam. So with all that said, I think we did everything that we were meant to do, apart from unfortunately showing the control that Danny did. But we'll make sure that we have a shout out for it in the YouTube video later. And thanks Evan. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody that showed up or maybe watching this in the future.
Bye bye everyone. Have a good day. Have a good evening. And see you on the next stream. Bye bye. Thank you.